Hello and welcome to Access Chat. We're delighted to be joined by Anna Dixon today. Anna is the CEO of Aging Better, which is a topic that is very close to all of our hearts, I think. Um, so, Anna, it's great to have you with us. I know that you're looking at sort of significant issues around age and ability and participation in society and technology, etc. So, can you tell us how you came to be working in this field and a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I've been the chief exec of the Centre for Aging Better for 4 years, and that is the same age as the organisation. So we set it up from scratch, and it's got a very positive vision that we create a society here in England that is a great place for people to grow old and that people can enjoy their later life. So it's really focused on how we can enable people, particularly those who are approaching later life, so broadly people in their 50s and 60s, to and those who are at risk of sort of perhaps missing out on a good later life, see what changes we can make both in policy and practice. And I came to this from a background in health and social care, but we touch on issues including housing, employment, communities and health. So it's a really broad and fascinating area.
Yeah, and I think we often talk about aging on this show because we know that age and disability are often interrelated. So I guess that brings us on to the first topic. Why for you is positive inclusion of disabled people relevant to the work of Aging Better?
Yeah, well, as you say, of course, the two do intersect. We try to challenge some of the ageist stereotypes. So, of course, disability is not an inevitable part of aging. On the other hand, the prevalence and conditions increase with age, and we know that lots of people with these sort of slow onset conditions do then develop disabilities. And we also know that there are going to be many, many more people living longer and more older people. So estimates suggest that in the next 20 years, 1 in 4 people in the UK will be over 65. So this is going to be a growing issue. And so we want to make sure that society is inclusive for people of all ages and abilities. And so that's really our focus. And obviously that touches on all sorts of areas of life, how people can stay in work for longer, and what needs to happen in the workplace in terms of employers. It affects our homes where we live, the design of our housing, again, to enable people to remain independent. And then broader communities, how can we make sure that people can continue to contribute, to participate? And so sort of, as I say, that whole idea of positive inclusion is critical to all the work we're doing.
Excellent, thank you. And I think that I actually live in an area which is of a very aged demographic. We're in retirement. The South Coast is like the retirement area of the UK, so I'm about 3 decades younger than most of the people in my village. But inclusion is really important. We're lucky that there is a real village life and there's a community here, but that's not always the case in other parts of the UK. So that must be something that is of concern to you when you're looking at how do we keep people engaged and active and all of the rest of it.
Yeah. So certainly in the UK, you're right to say a lot of the rural and particularly coastal areas are sort of ahead in terms of this demographic shift, having already got a very high proportion of people at older ages. But the fact is that over the next 20 years, pretty much everywhere is going to look like those places do today. So we are supporting a movement of what we call age-friendly communities. So there's a UK network. It's a global movement, though, supported by the World Health Organization. And exactly as you describe, it is about communities, often led by the local authority, the local government, but including active citizens as well. And it's really about taking a future approach to how to make the place more inclusive. And so that does mean looking at things like transport, which is critical in rural areas, what's going on, in terms of activity, how much support there is for community activity, looking at things like the housing and opportunities for volunteering, for example. So, I think there are places that have seen the sort of need to do that, but we're trying to encourage all parts of the UK to become age-friendly communities so that they're ready, in a sense, and not only helping older people today, but future generations as the demographic changes happen.
Excellent. Deborah, you had a question.
Well, I have a comment. I love the work that you're doing, Anna. I think it's very important. And I know that in the United States, of course, we, like every other, countries, we are also aging very quickly in the United States now. All of the baby boomers are over the age of 55. And every single day for the next few years, we're going to have 10,000 Americans turning 65. And according to, as you said, just because you're aging doesn't mean that you're going to acquire a disability. But according to our AARP, our American Association of Retired Persons, over the age of 65, about 46% of Americans do acquire disabilities that impact our ability to use technology and other things. And so it's a very, and we had a guest that Antonio had brought in with his name is Rob Newhouser with Siemens, and he talked about having 5 generations in the workforce. And I forget how many employees they have, hundreds of thousands of employees in Atos. Actually, Neil had mentioned that it's the same way with them as well. But the really understand, it's almost like we have to rethink what it means to age. Because I know I'm now a woman of a certain age. I'm now 60. And I decided to stop fighting coloring my hair because I was thinking, why are you coloring your hair? And so I decided to let it grow natural, and then I added some purple just to make it fun. But it feels like we need to redefine what it means to be of a certain age. And I'm trying to embrace the elders, so what responsibility do you think we have what did society really, should we have to make sure that we are appreciating as we age ourselves, and then at the same time working with the younger generation? Because I see so much still, the millennials, blah, 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 and I see my age group attacking the millennials and back and forth, the millennials, blah, get out of the workforce, what are you doing? But what can we do to help people be just okay with whatever age we're at? I know that's
firstly, to say, Deborah, I totally agree. This is a global issue. So obviously we work here in the UK, but we share this challenge or opportunity, depending which way you look at it, with pretty much all developed countries, industrialized countries. Obviously, places like Japan and Singapore are further ahead on that age shift, but other countries are coming very hot on our heels. Some of the rapidly industrializing and countries like Brazil are not far behind us. So this is truly a global issue, and thankfully some countries have recognized that they need to do something about it, and are putting forward much more positive national strategies focused on productive aging, active aging, successful aging. They call it different things. And I think that's really critical because, as you say, our experience has changed beyond recognition. So we're living at least 10 years longer than our parents' generation, 20 years longer than our grandparents' generation. And recently, statistics out in the UK looking at how healthy we are at different ages basically was saying that 70 is the new 65. So if you look at how healthy people were 10 years ago, At 65, that's now at 70. So the good news is we're living longer, but also we're staying healthy longer. But we still do have quite a long period where people do have disability in later life. And so it's really critical that we do make these changes in society, that we have new products and services. And I think there is a big issue that business and employers, as you say, have not yet woken up. One, to the fact that actually a very high proportion of their workforce are over 50. So what does that mean for an employer? And we're doing lots with some leading employers to develop the evidence base about what they should be doing, but also products and services. I mean, you mentioned the sort of beauty industry, all the anti-aging products, but we can extend that to the housing products. There's still a lot of specialist with care products being developed rather than attractive, mainstream, inclusive products for the home that could allow people with disability to live independently as they age.
Oh, well said, well said. And it is interesting that the beauty and the anti-aging and all that stuff, and once again defining that when the day, it seemed like the day that I turned 60, and I saw an article that said 60 is the new 50. And I think sometimes that is used to make things a little bit more difficult, because one thing, I want people that are 50 to be cool with being 50, people that are 20 to be good with 20, people that are 60. So there's so many nuances associated with this. And I really know that you're correct in that the employers don't know what to do, but I do know that the aging, what we've been predicting and what we've been saying for many, many years was going to happen has happened. And I was speaking to a global bank about 6 weeks ago, and they were really, really freaked out. They had done a lot of efforts with inclusive design, accessibility, making sure that people with disabilities were including, but now many of their high net worth individuals were aging into disabilities. And they were finding that they could not meet the needs of these clients that they really want to meet the needs, not to mention also many of their executives are experiencing, it's just part of aging. So it's really important, first of all, that we come together, which is why we're so honored to have you on the program, because we need to bring the disability inclusion, the aging, all of it together, not as a negative, and that you're going to get, but right. Go ahead.
Yeah. So no, I agree. And in the workplace, that's really critical. I think one of the challenges is that a lot of older workers who do have slow onset do not self-identify as having a disability. And that makes it quite difficult. They don't raise it with their line manager. They therefore don't make the requests that they are entitled to for adjustments. They would definitely have to make common cause. We've set out many things that I think would help people with disability in the workplace, regardless of age. So number one is flexibility. Really important for anybody who's managing a health condition, who's got caring responsibilities. All sorts of flexibility. It turns out that people want, not only their hours, where they work, but they also need to think about job roles and how they can be flexed. We're looking at how people with health conditions can be better supported in the workplace. Again, having those open conversations to disclose, really understanding what they can do to adapt the workplace to support people. We're also looking at age bias in recruitment. So obviously age is what we call a protected characteristic. So along with race and gender and disability. And so it's not something that should be being used to discriminate. But we know that there are issues about people being turned down for jobs because of their age. And so, again, I think trying to look at how the recruitment process can eliminate biases of all types is going to be really significant. And again, making sure that age or disability are not used to discriminate. You talked about the number of different ages in generations in the workplace. So there's just something about managing a diverse workforce. And there's evidence coming out that a more diverse workforce is generally a better performing workforce. More ideas, greater productivity. So I think we need to empower managers to be able to manage those age diverse teams. And then finally, having ongoing career conversations, not writing people off when they're 50 and saying, oh, well, you haven't got long left, thinking that they might have 20 more years of work. So how can we have conversations with people about training, progression, development, so that they can continue to contribute effectively to the workforce? So I think these are common things globally for all employers, to be thinking about. And I definitely think those things would also benefit younger people with disability as much as they would older workers. I don't know if you wanted to pick up as well housing, because I do think that's another area.
Yeah.
But I think Antonio had a question.
No, I was about, but I think I changed it a little bit in order to be more to follow the context where we're going. I've seen organizations doing employee events where they rented a football stadium. They have put a lot of balloons, so all the millennials were playing on the balloons and everyone else was drinking beer because they didn't want to run and go mad around the other type of activities. So sometimes organizations, when they do this type of activities for employees, they consider a group, but they don't consider the needs of everyone else. So on the other, they're just trying to find something that suits them.
Sorry, go on, yes, Antonio.
No, please.
So I think there is a focus in a lot of businesses on how can we make our workplace really attractive to the millennials, and they're competing for a diminishing number of people. The facts are that there are, fewer people coming into the workforce each year, as it were, leaving school and university, and many, many more who are leaving at the other end due to retirement, and there's just not enough to replace them. And so businesses have got a really I think the wrong sort of workforce approach if all they're doing is trying to make their workplaces attractive to millennials. I think they need to be thinking about attracting workers of all ages. And that's not to say that, they all want totally different things. As I said, I think that many people want the same things out of work. And I think employers are perhaps foolish to think that by sometimes doing gimmicky things, this is going to attract millennials. Actually, they also want flexibility. They also want people to invest in their lifelong learning and career opportunities. They like as well to have autonomy and control. So I actually think that most people want the same thing in work. Indeed, that's what our evidence suggests. The one thing that older workers seem to value maybe more than younger workers is the social contact. They like work for social reasons. Otherwise, I think we all want pretty much the same thing.
No, I agree. And sometimes those who creating, when you ask employees, they pretty much want the same things, but somehow there's this kind of a bias, sometimes coming from a perception coming from the startup world that you need to do cool things just to attract people. So and that sometimes is something that corporates and end up doing just because it's what is being trending around a certain groups around human resources.
Yeah, I agree.
So we know that you have a particular focus on homes.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you doing in this area, and why do you think it's so important in the positive inclusion of disabled people in this area?
So in particular for older adults, they spend more time in their home. So particularly after retirement, when people perhaps stop work. And so it's really critical that the place where they live supports them to continue to have a full, independent and purposeful life. We also know, though, the home can be a hazard to our health. So cold and damp homes creating health issues, but also hazards causing falls, which are a result not only of people dying, but also of disability. And at the moment here in the UK, and I don't know the figures so well about the US or other countries, a very, very small percentage, so 7% of our homes currently meet even the most basic accessibility standard, which only means that they're visitable by somebody with a mobility issue. You know, if you start to actually say fully wheelchair accessible or people that could live in those homes with mobility issues, it's a tiny, tiny percent. So we've got to change that. The projected figures of the number of households where somebody will be over the age of 65 are projected to grow hugely. And so it's really critical for those people that we build all new homes to much higher accessibility standards. And that's what we're campaigning for here in the UK. So we're joined together with other housing organisations, including those that have in the past been more focused on disability, to join forces to call on the government to increase the regulations so that there is a higher level of accessibility in all new homes that are built in this country. So I think that's the sort of number one big issue, is if we can at least get more of the new homes built to the standards. And then, of course, we've got to adapt some of our current homes because, you know, most of the homes that people are going to be living in for the next, you know, probably 50 years are already built. And in that area, we're looking at home adaptations. And what we've done through our research is we've seen that people delay putting them into their homes until they're really in a crisis. And this is partly because they look very clinical and ugly, and they're not things that are mainstream or well-designed products. And so, again, we think there's a lot to do to change really the retail offer, so that if you're redoing your bathroom or kitchen, whatever your age, but particularly say if you're in your 50s, you should be getting the right advice from the mainstream providers about how to design that so that it can be accessible, whether that's an eye-level oven, the design of the taps. There's so many things that could be done that would be nice products that everybody could have in their home that would also work for people with varying disability. So that's the sort of direction that we're going on housing, both making sure that new homes are built to be accessible, which would benefit people of all ages with disability, and also trying to make sure that as people refurbish their home, that there are adaptations and products available that are more attractive than those that are currently available.
I was talking with people a few months ago here in Ireland about social housing and housing for people with disabilities, and what they were saying is, no, well, we are entitled to social housing, but usually what happens is we are entitled to a home, but then we only visit that home once it's ready. So we have access, we get the keys, and then we go and ask for our own accommodation needs. So it means that they need to retrofit a new home because they never engaged with the people who are going to live in the house before. How do you see that in the UK?
Well, I think there is a need to co-design these products with people with disability themselves. I would agree with that. But we do have some quite good technical standards already. And so there is something about adopting the technical standards that we already have. I think in addition to that, we need to recognise, particularly for older people with disability, that many of them are homeowners. And so they are not in social housing. There is an issue about the supply of specialist social housing for people with disability, whether there's enough of it, whether it's well enough designed. But the majority of older people are homeowners, and so they, on the whole, have to take the responsibility themselves for adapting their home. And that's why we think the market needs to change to provide those people with the products and services that are going to allow them to be able to adapt their own homes, rather than what happens at the moment, which is that they stay in those homes, have a very poor quality of life until they really can't live there any longer, and then adaptations may be paid for by what's called the Disabled Facilities Grant through the local authority, or they have to pay it for themselves for the adaptations, or they get stuck in hospital, or they end up getting admitted to a care home, none of which are great outcomes.
No. And I remember that we were first introduced actually by the Design Council. So you've been doing work with the Design Council on improving the design of all of this stuff. So I'm very much of the opinion that we can have beautiful, accessible stuff, and that you can, have a grab rail that doesn't look like it's something out of a hospital. Why? No one wants to live in a home that looks like a hospital ward.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no reason why we can't have good design. And it should, you go to a hotel, they always have a grab rail in the bathroom. It's beautifully designed. It's all just part of the bathroom suite. So why is it not when we go and buy a new bathroom suite that these things are not just the standard product? Certainly the Design Council, they have a program called Spark where they're funding early stage innovators in terms of designing products. We also have recently in the UK, the government are funding an innovation fund with the purpose of stimulating the market to bring forward new products and services and to scale existing products and services that are going to better meet the needs of an aging population. And part of that, and the big message that we've been in advising them, is saying, make sure you do co-design with the people, the end users of these products, and make sure that they are inclusive and attractive so that they're things that everybody would want to be using. So I think that this is where, for me, the sort of positive inclusion agenda around disability and that around aging absolutely come together.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, we had one of our former colleagues that's actually moved from IT into appliance manufacturing. So he's working for a Spanish appliance homeware manufacturer called Teca now, and looking at how they can, start doing inclusive design and start actually. And one of the key things was that they're realizing that they're putting in all of these sort of appliances with loads of features that no one uses, because once you get past 2 or 3 steps, it becomes too difficult. So it's working out sort of what do people really need, and as you say, co-design that makes these things livable. So I always joke about my cheapo microwave, but I love it because it's got 2 dials. One is you set the the strength of cooking. The other is time. That's it, and away you go. It's even I can operate it.
Yeah, the idea that we all love this complexity is such nonsense. Most of us, really good products that are simply designed can work for everybody. And I think that we got to get that into the teaching of design schools and architecture practices and planners, so that they are all understanding this different approach.
Yeah, and just to follow up, and I will hand over to Deborah because I'm now hogging the mic. Essentially, what I think we need to design for, successful completion. It's task completion that we want to look at here, rather than how many things can you do. It's like, well, what are the things you really need to do, and can everyone do them well, rather than, oh, can I set my kettle so that it achieves a temperature of 93 degrees, which will make me the perfect cup of tea after 15 little presses on the thing and a lot of beeps.
Yeah.
Over to you, Deborah.
I think that we're all jockeying to talk to you, Anna, because we love this topic. And, aging in place, that's something that, we as baby boomers in the United States and certainly all over the world want to do. You talk about, these homes and stuff. Another thing we didn't talk about, they're so expensive. They're so expensive. I remember my mother, who is now passed away, my mother went into a home and she was having to pay $6,000 every single month. And I know some people that are paying $12,000. And it's, yay, if you happen to have that money. I mean, my mom my mom worked her whole life for this money. And it was just going through it And, so, but the aging in place, and then, also all of the technology. I was talking to an executive of a very, very, very large corporation the other day who actually got injured and is in a wheelchair right now. She's going to be able to get out of her wheelchair in a few years as she gets stronger. But she was in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. She went to 28 different apartments and homes and townhouses, and none of them were accessible. And we've had our Americans with Disabilities Act since 1990, 30 years. And she had to go to 29. And she was trying to open the bathroom door in her corporation. She couldn't open the door in her wheelchair. And she's like, this is ridiculous. And she went to a colleague who's in a wheelchair. She's like, how do you do it? Well, I try to be strategic. So I watch my fluid how much I drink. And I wait till the time when people are going to be. What are we doing here? Inclusive design works for everybody. Everybody benefits from the inclusive design. And the aging, I think, Anna, we have been talking about disability inclusion in our careers, 30 years, all of us, even longer, but I think the aging of our societies, this is what's going to get everybody's attention. And then on top of it, another thing that scares me a bit, and we've gotten involved in this conversation, but we are trying to start legislating the voice technologies in the United States. There's legislation in California, there's 2 pending in Illinois, and we're very concerned about the impact it's going to have on our senior citizens and on people with disabilities, because I get it. We don't want everybody snooping and privacy, and I'm for all that too. But in some ways, I think that cat's already out of the bag. I mean, it's already happening. So the technologies have to learn so we can use them to stay independent in our homes, our smart devices. So there's all these things converging, Anna, and I know you're doing amazing work in the UK, but how do we address all the things that are coming together, including what we already talked about? Obviously, we need to have you on the show like 25 times.
There's so much to talk about, isn't there? Yeah.
I know. It's a huge topic.
There is.
And it's happening now.
I really think that we have to wake people themselves up to this. So there's lots that policymakers and business can do, but we do have to wake individuals up to this. For the points that you make, that if their home is not able to support them to age in place, they are going to be having to pay very high care fees. So we need to get people to be investing in adapting their homes earlier in their life, with the understanding that that's going to enable them to receive care into their home and potentially stay there right through to the end. I mean, depending on, whether they have dementia, or depends on their needs. But for many, many more people, if their home were well adapted, they could stay with the right care and support coming in that home right through until they die. So, and that is probably what most people want, number one. And two, as you say, it will save them money and their families from those care fees of having to go into an institutional setting. So we do need to sort of wake people up to this. We need to get them to take action. We need the products and services to be there, to be well marketed and retailed to them. But as you say, the problem at the moment is that when planners are thinking about how many of these homes, they tend to be thinking very narrowly, like how many people with disability are there and what do we think the numbers will be in the future? And then we just need that many specialist housing. I mean, you need to get away from that because, as you've said, often those don't fully meet the needs of people with very high and specialist needs. And you can't match people up. The places they want to be and the places that those homes are don't often match up. People want to stay where they know people, where they've got community around them. And so it's really critical that more of the homes are built to these standards, that they're much more easy to adapt to people's needs as they change, and that we just have it as a default that all homes are built to these standards. And then we need estate agents to be making that information available to consumers so that if people like your friend are looking for somewhere that's going to be suited to their needs, there is some sort of kite mark or something that indicates this home meets lifetime standards, accessible standards, So actually, if I'm 70 and I'm looking to move and I haven't got an issue now, but I want to buy somewhere that's going to, last me for the rest of my life, that should be something that the market is signaling as a product. And I think there's demand there for it. At the moment, that demand is not being met. And we see that in the data. There are half the number of people moving in their 60s and 70s than there are at other ages. And what's happening is people are waiting until a crisis and then they're having to make a crisis move. And that's not what people want to do. So I think that the numbers, are changing so rapidly in the numbers of older people that, this has got to be a great opportunity to really get inclusive homes built in large numbers.
No, I've seen in Europe we are adding things like the energy standards in housing. We're able to measure a house by the level of electricity and sustainability standard that can provide. And I think it seems that could be then something similar in terms of accessibility. You could identify if a certain house would be accessible under a certain level, and when you are buying the house, you were able to see that and make that decision. I think this is something that very interesting to bring to the real estate market. And we're not talking about something that will go away. The trend is here to stay, and I think this is something with some interesting potential to be worked on.
And I think it could go even further as the idea of age-friendly communities takes hold. I think in the US, the AARP have done a livability index, which is there and available to the public. So if you want to choose even where you might live, if you're thinking about moving community, thinking about whether the place that you're moving is age-friendly, is the transport accessible? And you get around the town centre in terms of the crossing times, drop curbs, are there, is it somewhere that is inclusive and accessible to people of all ages and abilities? And we, in supporting the age-friendly communities here in the UK, have got them doing things like walking audits. So they go around and identify problems in the environment, draw those to the attention of the local government to try and introduce perhaps seating, change the crossing times, that sort of thing. Another area that we work with the Isle of Wight, they've been doing training for bus drivers. So the bus drivers can understand if somebody just needs to show a card, and they'll know if they've got a sight problem, so they'll speak out the name of the stop. They'll know if they have a mobility, so they will wait until the person is seated, etc., etc. So it's led to quite significant changes in driver behaviour, and indeed thinking about the timetabling and routes that some of the transport takes. And then the other initiative, which seems to have taken off in lots of places, we've got a case study written up on our website at agingbetter.org.uk if people want to look at it, called Take a Seat. It's really simple. It's getting local businesses to put up a sticker just saying, you're really welcome to come in and take a seat, no obligation to buy. And it just gives people with mobility issues the confidence to go out into their town centres, to go out shopping, because they know if they need to take a break and sit down, then there will be places where they can do that. So there's lots of these small changes in the community that I think can make all the difference to whether people feel confident to go out and about. And we clearly want to make sure that people with disability of all ages can go out and about, and so they don't get socially isolated and can continue to participate. So we're excited about that and the growth in age-friendly communities, and that is a global movement. So hopefully lots of your people listening in will encourage the places that they live to also look into that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. It's gone too quickly. I've got a raft of other questions that I'm not going to ask now because we need to close and say thank you to our supporters, Barclays Access, Microlink, and MyClearText for keeping the lights on and keeping us sustained and going, and these conversations about inclusion sustained and going over the years. Thank you, Anna. It's been really great. I'm really looking forward to continuing this chat on Twitter. I know that our community is going to really engage on this topic, so you better warm your fingers up.
Right, I'll look forward to that.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.